On October 17th, 2019, a local radio station in northern Ohio broadcast what would become one of the most thoroughly documented, unexplained events in modern broadcasting history. The incident lasted approximately 81 minutes. It involved a late-night radio host, dozens of phone calls from people officially listed as deceased, and a transmission recorded on a frequency that should not have existed. By sunrise, one man had disappeared without a trace. The station never went back on the air. This is the story of the dead frequency. WNTR 98.7 FM was a small, independent radio station operating out of a converted office building on the edge of the city. During the day, it aired music and local news. At night, it hosted a call-in program called Night Lines. The show was hosted by Marcus Hale. For nearly a decade, Hale had built a loyal audience by discussing local legends, unusual experiences, and unexplained events. The format was simple. Listeners called in, Marcus listened. Most nights were uneventful. October 17th was different. The archived recording begins at 2:13 a.m. Until that point, the broadcast appeared completely normal. Marcus was discussing an urban legend involving an abandoned church outside the city when the station phone rang. According to station records, the incoming caller ID displayed only static. No number, no location, no routing information. The call was connected anyway. The first few seconds contained only interference. Then a woman's voice emerged. The audio was heavily distorted, but investigators later isolated a short statement. The caller said, "Marcus, you need to stop listening." The call disconnected immediately afterward. At the time, neither Marcus nor his audience appeared concerned. Strange callers were common on late-night radio. The incident might have ended there. Instead, the phone rang again, 23 minutes later. The second caller was a male. Audio analysis revealed signs of extreme emotional distress. The individual appeared to be crying. When Marcus asked if he was all right, the caller responded with a single sentence. "They said nobody could hear us." The line went dead. The station received hundreds of listener messages within minutes. Some assumed it was a prank. Others believed the calls were part of a planned Halloween promotion. No one realized that something far stranger was unfolding. The third call changed everything. At 2:47 a.m., a voice identifying itself as David Mercer appeared on the broadcast. David Mercer had been the station's former producer. He had died 3 years earlier in a traffic accident. Multiple station employees later confirmed that the voice sounded identical to Mercer. The archived recording captures Marcus falling silent for several seconds after hearing the name. The caller then delivered a warning. "You need to shut down the transmitter." Marcus demanded to know who was speaking. The caller repeated the warning. He then stated that something had found the signal. Before Marcus could ask for clarification, the connection abruptly terminated. Within moments, another call arrived. This time, The caller sounded like a child. Investigators were unable to determine the child's identity. The voice repeatedly asked whether anyone could hear them. The child appeared relieved when Marcus responded.
The recording ends with the statement, "They told us nobody could hear us anymore." The line disconnected. By 3 a.m., the pattern had become impossible to ignore. The callers shared no common age, location, or background. However, every voice that could be identified belonged to someone who was dead. Researchers later compared the recordings against public records. Several matches were confirmed. One caller had died 6 months earlier. Another had been buried only days before the broadcast. A third matched archived voicemail recordings from a woman declared deceased in 2011. No explanation was ever found.
The station's technical staff began examining the phone system. Their findings only deepened the mystery. No incoming numbers were recorded. The calls left no digital footprints. According to the logs, the station should not have been receiving any calls at all. Yet the conversations were occurring live on air. At approximately 3:11 a.m., the nature of the calls began to change. The callers stopped asking for help. Instead, they began issuing warnings. Different voices repeated similar phrases.
Do not listen to unfamiliar signals. Keep your radio off after midnight. Do not answer voices you cannot identify. The most common warning appeared 21 times during the next 15 minutes. Do not listen to the frequency. Marcus attempted to obtain an explanation. No caller provided one. Most seemed frightened. Several sounded as though they were struggling to speak. Others appeared distracted by something nearby. One unidentified caller repeatedly whispered, "They're getting closer." When Marcus asked who was getting closer, the connection ended.
At 3:17 a.m., listeners reported the first major anomaly. Thousands described a sudden burst of static interrupting the broadcast. The interference lasted less than 2 seconds. What happened during those 2 seconds remains controversial. A large number of listeners claimed they saw an image, not on a screen, not in a reflection, inside the static itself. Descriptions varied slightly, but most reports mentioned a pale face with an unnatural number of eyes. Others described rows of teeth. Some claimed the face appeared only for a fraction of a second. Several listeners immediately shut off their radios. Others continued listening. The broadcast recording contains only static during this moment. No image was ever recovered. At 3:20 a.m., Marcus finally asked the question that many listeners had been wondering. What exactly was the frequency?
For several seconds, no caller responded. Then a voice answered. Unlike previous callers, this voice could not be identified as human. Audio engineers spent years analyzing the recording. The source remains unknown. The entity spoke only 4 words. "We hear you now." Immediately afterward,
The station experienced severe technical disruptions. Multiple systems began malfunctioning simultaneously. Recording equipment reset without warning. Audio levels fluctuated wildly. The building's internal clocks reportedly lost synchronization. One clock advanced by 6 minutes, another moved backward by 11, a third stopped completely. Despite the failures, the broadcast continued. At 3:26 a.m., listeners began calling emergency services. Reports described unusual sounds emerging from radios throughout the region. Witnesses compared the noises to distant voices layered on top of one another. Some heard crying, others heard screaming.
Several claimed they recognized the voices of deceased relatives. None of these reports could be verified. However, the timing matched a significant anomaly later discovered in the station archives. During this period, WNTR briefly transmitted on an unknown frequency. According to federal records, the frequency did not exist within any licensed broadcasting band. No authorized equipment should have been capable of producing it. Yet multiple independent receivers recorded the signal. The anomaly lasted approximately 11 seconds. No explanation was found. At 3:33 a.m., the final phase of the incident began. The station received one last call from the voice, identifying itself as David Mercer. Unlike the previous conversation, the caller sounded exhausted. The recording contains heavy interference, but investigators successfully reconstructed portions of the message. The caller warned that something was approaching through the signal. Marcus asked what it was. There was a pause lasting nearly 4 seconds. Then the caller answered. The things that listen after people die.
Immediately afterward, conditions inside the station deteriorated. Security cameras recorded lights flickering throughout the building. Doors opened without visible cause. Several monitors displayed static despite being disconnected from external inputs. Most disturbing was the behavior of Marcus Hale himself. The footage shows him staring toward the studio entrance. No one appears to be standing there. Nevertheless, Marcus seems to be watching something. His expression shifts from confusion to fear. He slowly stands. He takes several steps backward. Then he begins speaking. No audio exists from the security footage. As a result, investigators do not know what he was saying. The final broadcast recording captures only fragments. A sudden surge of interference overwhelms the signal. Thousands of voices appear simultaneously. Some are screaming. Others seem to be issuing warnings. A few repeat Marcus's name. Then the transmission stops. The exact time was 3:34 a.m.
Police arrived at the station approximately 20 minutes later after receiving reports of possible equipment failures and distress calls. They found the building unlocked. The studio was empty. Marcus Hale was gone. No signs of violence were discovered. No evidence suggested that he had left the building. His personal belongings remained inside the studio. His vehicle was still parked outside. Despite an extensive search, no trace of him was ever found. The station ceased operations later that day. Federal investigators examined the equipment. Independent engineers reviewed the recordings. Paranormal researchers conducted their own analyses. None produced a satisfactory explanation. The case gradually faded from public attention. Then new reports began appearing.
In 2021, amateur radio operators documented an unusual signal occurring at exactly 3:33 a.m. The signal appeared only briefly and only under specific atmospheric conditions. Most receivers captured nothing more than static. A small number recorded something else. A voice.
The voice was identified by former station employees as Marcus Hale. Every recording contained the same message: turn it off. The statement was followed by several seconds of interference. Then a second sentence emerged: they can hear you now. The transmission always ended the same way: a phone ringing. Nothing else. No explanation accompanied the signal. No source was located. Attempts to trace it consistently failed. The phenomenon continues to be reported sporadically to this day. There is one final detail often omitted from discussions of the case. During the official review of station records, investigators discovered an internal document generated automatically by the broadcast system at 3:33 a.m. The file contained no technical information, no diagnostics, no error codes, only a single line of text. No one could determine how it was created. The message read, "Frequency acknowledged. Listening has begun." The file remains archived. Marcus Hale remains missing. And every year on October 17th, radio enthusiasts across the country listen for a signal that should not exist. Some claim they still hear it. Most hear only static. But a few report hearing a phone ring in the darkness, waiting for someone to answer.